myself again, but it's the only way.
Good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. Slightly earlier retro show tonight, which has pleased Mitch and Stu in foreign lands, means it can get to bed a bit earlier. But it's good evening to them, good evening to George, Steve Hasty and Steve Wilkinson as we look at Carlisle, Tranmere and PortVale. And the sound of those three teams have the lads, I think, sweating heavily. But honestly, when you start looking into it, there's been some good games, there's some good memories, there's some great players, and there's some good celebrities. So all in all, tonight should be a good show. Without further ado, we'll go straight to George, and we'll get his first match. George.
Hello, everyone. My first match is 1-0 home win for Newcastle in 1974. But before that, I wanted to talk a bit about Carlisle because it has a bit of sentimental value for me. My second game for Northumberland boys was against Cumberland, and it was at Brunton Park at Carlisle. That's why I sent the pictures of Brunton Park, Steve.
Okay, well, I'm going to go through and you just tell me when you want the photos up. So I've got this one.
Now, that's the Brunton Park I remember, okay? And then if you take it on to the next one, that's Brunton Park now, since they redeveloped it after the flood. And if you go to the next one,
Craigie.
That was the flood. That's what did to it.
Never leave your taps on, lads.
It actually went up as high as the goalpost, as you can see, the crossbar. So that's a hell of a recovery from that to what they've got now. So, and as I say, it was a good experience for me. But Cumberland had two notable players in their team. David Oliphant at centre half, who after the match signed for Liverpool, and a little lad on the left wing called Peter Thompson, who after the match signed for Preston North End, and eventually went on to have a massive career with Liverpool and Newcastle. In England, rather. I wish Newcastle. That would have been good, wouldn't it? Liverpool and England. And so it was, as I say, Carlisle had a little bit sentimental value for me. The other thing is that when I did this lot, it was amazing that normally when we do these retro things, when we pick our teams, we end up scrambling around for goalkeepers. Well, didn't have any scramble for goalkeepers with this one. At Carlisle, there was about 10 Newcastle connections, 7 Mackems connections, and 3 for Teesside. We could have had a full team of goalkeepers from the northeast. Anyway, back to the first game. 14th of September 74, 37,500 in the ground, and it was a decent game, but I picked it for one reason. I mean, there were other games I would have picked because I was there as well, but the lads have all staffed them, and I don't mind that. But I wanted to pick this one for one reason only. That's the goal. Our team at the time was Willie McFall, Irvin Natras, Frank Clark, Terry McDermott, Glenn Keeley, Pat Howard, Tommy Cassidy, John Tudor, Malcolm MacDonald, Terry Hibbert, and Mickey Burns, and Jimmy Smith was the substitute. And I picked it because of the goal, as I say. And the goal was scored by the one and only John Tudor. And it was the sort of goal which centre forwards and attacking players of his day would do. And nowadays, I don't think the forward players would put themselves in a place that he did, because it was a diving header. And when I say diving, he dived along the ground with his nose just above the turf into the feet of the defenders to head the ball into the back of the net. And I think nowadays they'd be putting their hands all over the place rather than putting their head in a danger zone. But John Tudor was that sort of player. And I think, as we've discussed on this program before between ourselves, a striker who really, in my opinion, didn't get the credit he deserves simply because he was in the team at the same time as people like Supermac and so on. But John Tudor was a magnificent player and deserved all the credit he got. Looking at the Carlisle side, is Alan Ross, Parker, Green, Gorman, who was to go on to have a good Scottish career in Scotland, Carr, Train, Les O'Neill, Laidlaw, and Hughie McElmoyle and Clark. Hughie McElmoyle was a character, well known in football circles and well travelled in football circles. This is Hughie McElmoyle's career. 55 to 60 Port Glasgow, 60-62 Leicester City, 62 to 63 Rotherham, 63-64 Carlisle, 64-66 Wolves, 66-67 Bristol City, 67-69 Carlisle, 70 to 71 Middlesbrough, 71 to 73 Preston North End, 73 to 74 Greenock Morton, 74 to 75 back to Carlisle, and 75 to 76 back to Greenock Morton.
Did he live in a touring? Did he live in a caravan?
I think he's maybe John Burridge's uncle.
What the hell his family thought about it, but what an amazing career! But what's interesting is never stopped playing. I mean, and he had quite a reputation, a really good reputation in football generally, and he was the lone star of the Carlisle team in this particular game. But as I say, the match hinged on one goal, and for me, hinged on one man. So that's my first match recollection. Did I send you another photo for this match, Steve? I don't think I did.
You sent us a couple of team photos. That's all.
Oh yes, it's Carlisle and
there's the Carlisle team.
That's it, yeah.
And there's the Newcastle
haircuts.
Yeah,
Right.
and same there. Look at them. I mean, it's and John Tudor right in the middle beside Frank Clark. You know, as
Terry
I say,
Mack in that photo as well. Happy 70th
Yes,
birthday to Terry Mack today.
Really?
Oh,
well.
Terry.
Yeah, well done.
Good
And,
stuff. Okay.
Okay,
Mitch,
and that's my first first match. Sorry.
From father to son, we'll go straight to Mitch.
Right. So my first game's a game against PortVale in 1992, 29th of February 1992. It was Keegan's, I think it was his fourth or his fifth game after he'd come in as manager. And it was obviously in that time when he was trying to keep him up after Ardiles had left. How I ended up going down there, you've heard us talk about my first wife, Alison, and one of the things she was really passionate about, her passion, mine was Newcastle United. Hers was a set of figurines that were cast porcelain figurines of wizards and dragons. And they were made in a pottery in Burslem. And that actually happens to be where PortVale is. It's one of the potteries teams. It's in Stoke. And Stoke is effectively a collection of 7 towns. And Burslem is one of them, and that's where PortVale is. And as it happens, that particular time, she got so involved with it, she was starting to do little jobs for them. She was writing backstories for the figurines, and she was going down to talk about actually being paid for doing it and getting a sort of a part-time job where we were both at uni. So, of course, always the White Knight, there was an opportunity there to take her down. Oh, and by the way, while we're there, there happens to be a game on at the local football ground. Do you mind if I go there?
Coincidence.
While this happens. So obviously we get down to Burslem, get checked into a hotel. It actually was B&B, really, actually quite a nice B&B for that matter. Get her into the potteries, and I turned around to the guy that owned the pottery, who I knew quite well by then. Where's PortVale's ground? And he just pointed. And you could see, that stupid me, you could see the bloody pylons. It was great, cracking. Off I go. So get in there, meet up with a few of the lads who knew I was coming down. And it was basically the game itself was not much of a game. It was a game where Mickey Quinn had made his comeback. He'd been unavailable with a knee ligament injury. But he did have an impact, and he had an impact in that PortVale's defenders didn't really know what to do with him. It was one of those ones where he was obviously fresh and ready to go, and he caused them a bit of a bother. So much so, he pulled out to the left-hand side, flicked on, and I think it was Peacock picked the ball up and took it into the box, and then pulled the ball back across the box, and a very young Steve Watson, wearing I think the number 7 shirt, ran onto it from the edge of the 18-yard box and cracked a shot into the roof of the net that nobody was stopping. Absolutely nobody was stopping that shot. Into the roof of the net. Wayne goes mental. Everybody's all over the place. And that sealed the game. PortVale, to be fair, never really got into the game. And we were seemingly content to keep it tight. As it turns out, when I've done a bit of research in the aftermath, that was actually our first away win of the season in February, at the end of February at that. And we still managed to stay up out of all of that. So there's another little ray of hope to cling on to for this season, that these things can happen. That when you get on a roll, when you get in the right place, and when the team's pulling together and you've got a bit of a tailwind, that suddenly things happen. And I wouldn't have bet that was our first away win of this season if you told us before I looked at it in a bit more detail. So after the game, we'll find a bar where the lads are getting ready to get back to the coach. I stagger back with the B&B, a little bit happy, shall we say. But with many brownie points, because she also got the part-time job that helped her get a law degree at the end of the day, to be fair. So everybody was happy at the end of the day. It's an interesting part of the world. It's a part of the world that obviously we have family connections to as well, which my dad spoke about before. And I don't know if he's going to mention that in his next choice or not. And so yeah, it was a great time. Obviously, in hindsight, being part of that Keegan revolution was fantastic. We all were delighted to be on that bandwagon. And it's amazing what a little bit of hope and a lot of togetherness can bring. And that's my first year.
Yeah. I love this story from Mark Edward Brown. He goes, great memories of my first away trip on the old supporters bus to Wembley for the Mercantile Credit Tournament.
Oh, great.
Only Toon fans would travel in their thousands for the prospect of 15 minutes of footy. We beat Liverpool, the league champions, then got beat off Tranmere, who were in the 4th division at the time. Typical Toon. He also remembers the bus down, as well as the Geordies getting full English breakfast at 3 a.m. at the services and telling each other to hide the sausages under the beans, then you only pay for the beans. Great story, Mark.
You're supposed to hide them down your sleeve. That's what we were told.
Exactly.
Go on then, Stu. Over to you.
My first one is just before our dealers took over. So it's the season before Mitch has just talked about. And it was against PortVale, early February 1991. And our manager was Jim Smith. And I remember when Jim Smith got announced to be our manager, you know, it was a big name boss at the time. He'd won a cup with, I think, Oxford and maybe QPR as well. You know, so it was really ambitious signing for Newcastle, and the big headlines in the Chronicle were the bald eagle has landed. And you think, right, we've actually got some hope here. But that season we got relegated from the 1st division. The next season we nearly went back up with the Quinn and McGee double act, and unfortunately the Mackems beat us in the playoffs. And then came this season, and this season was shrouded in the sack the board background, wasn't it? And the only consistency with the team was the inconsistency. And we'd won at Millwall the week before, and it wasn't often we'd won twice in a row that season, or this season, to be fair. But we hadn't won twice. I think only once in that season we'd won twice in a row. But optimism was high because we're playing PortVale at home, and they weren't doing much better than us. And the optimism went even higher after 4 minutes when Mickey Quinn corrected the cross with his back to goal. He laid it off, and then Gavin Peacock stabbed the ball with like a pitch and wedge precision, I suppose, into the top corner. Now, I use the word stab there because when I was making notes on it, I was going to say he lobbed the keeper, but then I thought, did he chip the keeper? So I was trying to work out what's the difference between a chip and a lob. So having this great debate with myself, I decided it's a chip if the ball's on the ground and it's a lob if the ball's bouncing. So what do you reckon, guys? I mean, that was just the way I decided.
Yep, I'm with you on that.
I am as well.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So he chipped, and then I used the word stab just in case, like, because it's like he punched the ball, but it just floated over. It was a really good finish. So So that was a question I said. But Port Vale really rarely threatened us at all. And it was really comfortable for us. It was probably one of our most comfortable wins of the season. And it became more so when my cult hero at that time, I mentioned him last week, Ray Ranson, produced some more wing wizardry, crossed the ball, and Mickey Quinn headed in midway through the second half, and it's game over. It was 2-0 up. The crowd that day was about 14,500. And it was that season where there was gaps everywhere. You know, we all, when we think about how the Gallagher was and we reminisce, you know, it used to be always busy or packed. Most games it was packed, but this time there was loads of space. But you could tell the apathy had set in with the fans because of the sack the board, the lack of ambition, etc. And so it was understandable, disappointing but understandable. But on a positive note, and this is strange because we haven't compared notes, the guy that Mitch mentioned just before there, Stevie Watson. Now, I was at Newcastle Boys with him, and then there was a pool of about 25 of us. And then the teacher's strike happened, and we got banned for, well, they stopped it for about 3 years. And when they brought everyone back, you know, like Stevie Watson was built like the proverbial outhouse, and and I was still about 5'5" at the time, you know. So there's a few of the lads from that group made it in professional football, but Stevie Watson was the first one that broke into the first team. He was only 16 at the time, and it was surreal watching him because I was still doing the paper round and he was playing for the tune. You know what I mean? It was mental. So on a positive note, it was great to see a local lad make it, and as we know, a few of them got blooded that season, and then our dealers did more.
Mate, it was super surreal. There was a whole cluster of them. There was Steve Watson, Tony Loma. I went to school with them all, so I was at school with them, kicking around with them through.
Alan Thompson,
Alan Thompson as well.
Alan Thompson, Robbie Elliott, Lee Makel.
Kicking around with them at school, and then at the weekend watching them playing St James's Park. It was mind blowing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was absolutely mind blowing.
And Stu, you
he couldn't sell properties in the Middle East though, so it's let him have his Premier League football career.
Stu, you've definitely got some kind of man crush on Ray, so there you go.
Definitely.
Somebody tweeted that the other day, so I thought of you straight away. I thought I'm going to keep this. There he is, Lucky Ray, as I used to call him, Lucky Ray Ransom.
He used to get dogs abuse, but you know he was a proper grafter, wasn't he? And he just went about his business. You know, he reminds us of Manquillo at the moment. You know, he's never going to get the praise, but as well. Aye.
Yeah.
I didn't invite him to my wedding or out, so I'm not that close to him. I just admire him. Some people preferred Kevin Dillon and stuff like that at the time, you know, but Ray Ransom was mine.
If anybody's looking to buy Stu a present, you know what it is. Search some Ray Ransom autographed shorts or something. You'll have them hanging in his bedroom. Steve, over to you, mate.
Hi guys, great stuff. I've gone back to my old roots. I've gone back to 1992. The promotion season when Newcastle played Tranmere, which was the 10th of October. Now, I've written some notes down because this was an important game for us. And for those of us who are old enough to remember, this was our 10 out of 10 game. This was when we went 10 games with a 100% record. But this was the 10th game. 30,000 were at the crowd. You're saying it's not long ago, Stu, since your 13 or 14,000 were in the Gallagher end and the rest of the ground. But we'd managed to fill the ground with 30,000 for this game against Tranmere with Tommy Wright, Venison, Beresford, Liam O'Brien, Kevin Scott, Steve Howie, Rob Lee, Gavin Peacock, David Kelly, Lee Clark, and Mickey Quinn. What a forward line, Clark. You've got there with Kelly and Quinn, which we all know how well they did. And substitutes were Mark Stimson and Franz Carr. Now, it was one of those games. What I find interesting about these, not just talking games, but when you look up and see what was said in the press about the game at this particular time. And it says that we're kind of stifled, and a rearguard action was put in place by Tranmere right from the start, and it kind of unsettled us. And that they came before the firing squad of Newcastle United's strike force and things like this. And it says that also while the the Rovers keeper Eric Nixon was kept more than busy. His opposite number, Tommy Wright, would have seen more action at the top of Everest, and it's stuff like that. You don't get press stories written like this anymore. You just got a bit of blandism. Maybe we should have a word with Liam, and he should start putting in little quotes like that on some of his articles. But anyway, this game, 30,000, as I say, a sellout crowd. We went 1-0 up with David Kelly goal in the 37th minute. And that's basically the way it remained. The very fact was, though, that it was this record-breaking run that we're on that was the most important. You look at the Tranmere team, and there was some decent players, some names that you remember. Obviously, John Aldridge, mentioned earlier. Pat Nevin was playing for Tranmere on the day as well. They had a centre defender called Steve Vickers, who I remember well, another big, cumbersome, hard central defender. They had a winger called Morrissey. They had Chris Malkin, Neil McNabb. These were players whose names you could remember when you look back on them, But yes, the win, as it said, meant that Keegan had now gathered more points after 10 games than Ozzy Ardiles did in his previous 29. So again, that shows you how a change of manager can just suddenly change a season like that. And the final little piece I just wanted to add, it says that 10 out of 10 on the 10th day of the 10th month, Keegan got September's Manager of the Month award. Tranmere didn't have a single shot on target. Kelly took over as the club's leading goal scorer, and Keegan then took the squad to the Isle of Man after the match on a golf break. God, how things have changed there. But that was the game. That was our 10 out of 10 special Brilliant. Game, 16th game of the season, our 10th game in the league, and we were now played 10, won 10, drawn none, lost none, 23 goals for, 6 goals against, 30 points. Tremendous.
Amazing. Ian says he bought the the video cassette tape. Don't think it left me video for years. I think most people were like that. Steve on Twitter, Shields Guri says, I'll never forget Easter Monday game versus Carlisle in 84. The penalty save at the Leazes, then straight up the wing with Special K scoring in the A paddock that day. So lots of people got memories. Steve, your first game, please.
Right, just to add on to what Steve said there about that game, I think that was the last game before the games became all ticket, because I think there was estimate about 10,000 queuing to get in. They couldn't get in. How popular things were in those days, and I think from then on, I think that they started making them games all ticket. Right. Okay, well, my first game is. Actually, the first game we ever played against Carlisle, which was in 1968. We haven't had a history of playing Carlisle because while we bounced between first and second division over our history, they were down in the third and fourth. Although they had a surge up to successive promotions in the mid 60s and became established in the second division. By which time we'd got into the first division. But the game was an FA Cup tie in 1968, third round. Steve, have you got the programme for that there?
I have, mate. Bear with us. Yeah, keep on, Steve. I'll have to find it.
Right. Just a little bit more about Carlisle, just linking back to George's game that he talked about. Carlisle actually topped the league in the first division. They went up to the first division in that 74 season or 73 season, and they won the first 3 games and were actually top of the first division. Probably around about that time when the game that George talked about was the start of the slide, because I think they finished bottom in the end and went back down. So that was the program.
Steve, can I just interrupt? That's when they didn't print the league tables till after 3 games either, did they?
Yes.
And then they were shown as the top.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So back to that program. You put up against Steve. Right. So price of shilling in those days, I used to buy a shilling's worth of chips, and you didn't get them in a paper bag then, and you can hardly carry a shilling's worth of chips. Shilling for those that are younger than that sort of time is 5 pence. So that was what you paid. But the significance of that program is this game we actually lost 1-0, and it was down to something that was actually in the programme. But we played Carlisle, which at that time, really, Carlisle would probably be considered the fourth derby team, because we had Sunderland and Middlesbrough playing in a similar leagues to Newcastle, but Carlisle were sort of bigger than Hartlepool and Darlington and probably the fourth team as being a sort of derby match. But as I say, we hadn't played them because we hadn't been in the same division. But this game attracted a lot of attention. 56,500. The FA Cup really mattered in those days, as George will tell from those earlier years. You got sort of 30,000 plus crowds at league games, but when the FA Cup came around, you could always add 10,000 at least. And with this being a derby match against Carlisle, they brought 12,000 fans over for this game, and it swelled the crowd up to 56,500. So it was a fantastic atmosphere and all set up for Newcastle having a good performance. But as you'll know, all the time over the years, Newcastle have failed to deliver on the FA Cup third round day quite more times than I've had hot dinners sometimes. And sadly, that was the case on this day. Carlisle took the lead after 10 minutes. A cross came in, and one of the smallest guys on the pitch, Tommy Murray, headed the ball in the net to give Carlisle a shock lead. So that obviously put a bit more spice into the match. And as much as we're pressed, we couldn't get into the game. And then in the second half, we got a penalty, and that's where this program came in, because just after Christmas, we'd played, Boxing Day and a few days later, we'd played Sunderland twice. They tended to play derby matches over the Christmas period, and we played a game at Roker Park, which ended in a 3-3 draw. And in that game, Ollie Burton took 2 penalties and scored them, and contributed to the 3-3 draw. Now, in those days, you didn't have television, so you couldn't go and study video footage of the matches. So it was whatever information you could gather. But in that program, they printed photos of Ollie Burton's shots in that game, and the keeper saw them and looked at the sort of the way that Ollie Burton kicked them in terms of where in the net he took them. So he took a chance, dived the right way, and saved the penalty. And so arguably that program lost us the match. So all for a shilling, we got knocked out of the cup because as much as we're pressed, we couldn't get back in the game, and knocked out of the third round again to a lower league team, which is something that has happened too many times over the years. So it was a pretty exciting game, great atmosphere because of the crowd, but typically Newcastle fell at the first hurdle of the FA Cup, and hopefully doing the same thing against Cambridge in a few weeks' time will not do the same. Although this year there is a lot more important things to worry about, so I'll not be bothered if we lose against Cambridge. So that's my first game.
Good stuff, Steve. Okay, big shout out to our sponsor, Spider VPN. Google Spider VPN. They come at the top of the search list. They will protect your computer from viruses and from unwanted visitors to your computer. So Google Spider VPN today for a quote on how you can get that sorted. Skipsandbins.com, big thank you to them as well. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website www.skipsandbins.com. Easy, contract free, and pay as you go waste collection. Thanks also to L&G Family Funeral Directors, 01913897245, and the Garden of Healing Dispensary, CBD, hemp and cannabinoid specialists, www.thegohd.com. Thanks also to Arcot Interiors for coming back for a couple of months, and to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle, and also the guys who run our website, NUFCmatters.com. Thanks to Jab Signature, jabsignature.co.uk. And if you're a first-time visitor to the channel, then please subscribe. Hit the Newcastle Legends logo in the bottom right-hand corner, and you can subscribe for free. We still do 7 shows a week. Hit the thumb up to like the video, click share to share to your social media, and drop into the comments box to speak to like-minded Newcastle fans, or to stick a post up on the screen. And we're also available as a podcast, iTunes, Spotify, and the rest. Usually goes up 24 hours after the show. Don't forget the Bobix event has been cancelled this week for the food bank. So do not turn up, and if you need a refund, please contact Bobix direct. You can still make a donation to the food bank though, NUFC fans, foodbank.co.uk. Use the matchday bucket, which is available 365 days of the year. And we've also got a little bit of technology tonight, which John from QTech wants to test. Probably not the best night because we don't get huge viewing figures for this. But if you've got a phone, put your phone over it, use your camera, and see whether you can use that. That might take you to the NUFC Matters membership pack, which is what we've been promoting. So if you've got a phone, give it a go, see whether it takes you to the website. We'll do that again on Friday, which of course is the Three Amigos, and it's often anticipated what the post is going to be. And some of you will be tuning into some of the other stuff that I do on the channel, so this one seemed quite appropriate. But I'll be joined by Mitch and Steve this coming Friday. No, it's not Pirates of the Caribbean. Yeah, look forward to that at the usual time of 5:30. Mischievous, that wasn't. That was my idea. But yeah, tune in at 5:30.
Really?
Me Dewey's round here, mush. Back to the next set of games. We're back with you, George, mate.
Thanks, Steve.
Oh, dear.
Neil anticipated what I might have been going to do if I could find a PortVale match worth I could remember, but I'm afraid I couldn't. However, he's raised the family connection with Stoke, and my grandfather Brian, who was born there, and so as a kid I got Stanley Matthews stuck down my throat all the time, and other great Stoke players. However, when I reflect on my two grandfathers, I wonder how we ever got to where we are. Because imagine this is a little lad called Tommy Bryan in Hanley, 14, going home from school, and he sees a recruiting man for the First World War, and he gets dragged into the recruiting office, and about 2 hours later, he's marching down the street off to the front, off to the Somme, and 250 miles north in Glasgow, there's another little fella called John Mitchell. Same thing on his way home from school, and the Highland recruiters there drags him in, and the next thing he's marching down the street to the front. And they must at some time have fought in the same sphere of the First World War, went right through it. Imagine two teenagers went right through the war. My grandfather Mitchell did get a shrapnel wound. He got a shrapnel wound in his hand, and they took him to a field hospital. And when he was going to the field hospital, the lad said, "Oh, the surgeon in this one, he'll just cut your bloody hand off. He's not going to stitch you up. He'll just cut it off." So when they laid John Mitchell down on the table for the surgeon, he looked the bloke in the eyes and he said, "If I wake up and that's missing, I'll come back and I'll shoot you." And so his hand was still there the next day. So anyway, how we still exist, that always amazes me, that somewhere along the line, these two guys, 20 odd years later, go to a hospital because their wives are having babies, and his John Mitchell's son marries Tom Bryan's daughter Ethel. And that's where we come from. It's a sorry to bore you with that, but Neil mentioned it, and it's a connection which is fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Anyway, my second match was in fact a Tranmere one, because again I remember the match very clearly, and there were quite a few characters in this match, and it's FA Cup, 14th of February, Valentine's Day, 1998. 36,675 in the ground, and it was a hard game because that particular Tranmere team was full of lads who could hold their own in a bit of a scrap, who were as well known to us as our own team were. Our own team was quite an interesting one, and a good football team. Given, Barton, Pierce, Batty, Howie, Pistoni, Gillespie. Pistoni, actually, I don't think we ever got the best out of that lad, but anyway, I thought he was a good player. Gillespie, but Robley, Shearer, Speed, and John Van Thomason. And of course, the manager was Dalglish, and Barnes and Kidsbuyer were the substitutes. It was hard fought, and go down the Tranmere team. Simonson was a goalkeeper with a huge reputation in a number of places, particularly at Stoke. They had a right back called Challoner. Challoner still, I've checked it up, still holds the world record for the longest throw-in, 47 metres from a throw-in. He still holds the Guinness Book of Records for a throw-in, and he was their right back that day. Then they had Thompson, Morgan and McGreal, two hardest players you ever to come across, and a guy called Clint Hill who knocked around for quite a while with QPR and others, and again a very, very hard character.
He was a nasty little piece of work.
Absolutely. Branch, and then lower down in the forward line, of course, sentimental reasons, Liam O'Brien, who got a fantastic welcome from the Gallagher. Irons, Johnny Morrissey, who Steve's already mentioned Morrissey, I think, who had a long career on Merseyside. And then, of course, David Kelly, another returning Geordie who got a fantastic reception from the Gallagher. And John Aldridge was the manager. But as I say, a team of characters, and they made a fight for it, there's no doubt about it. And the game was settled again with one goal, 22nd minute. Pistoni goes down the right-hand side and swings the ball in. And who should be on the end of it but Alan Shearer at a headway into a 1-0 lead. And it's interesting talking about the pros that Steve mentioned in the press reports and other reports about matches. I found a piece about this one which said that Pistoni's cross went into the middle with the celerity of an eagle onto Shearer's head. I mean, I just had to think twice about what bloody celerity meant and the celerity of an eagle. Well, it's fast and straight, and it went onto Shearer's head and into the back of the net. But you're right, we need a bit more prose like that. Actually, that was John Gibson, by the way, that wrote that.
Oh, would be Gibbo.
Yeah, it was John Gibson that wrote that.
Can we buy Liam a thesaurus for Christmas?
Yeah,
good idea.
And as I say, it was a hard-fought game because they weren't giving anything away. And we ran out 1-0 winners on the day in the FA Cup. However, the other thing I want to say was that there'd been many managers and players we've had who've both excited and then or disappointed me in the time I've been supporting Newcastle United. And I have to say, Dalglish is the one who, when we appointed him, I thought, oh, great. I don't know what I imagined was going to happen. Oh, and that's after Shearer scoring the goal, of course, with Gillespie hanging around his neck. And anyway, the most disappointing. One of the most disappointing from my point of view, because the CV he brought with championships with Blackburn and other things like that, you just imagined, well, if he's going to take it on, it'd be great. And it was awful. And slowly but surely dismantled the club, is my view, to the point where, he did as much damage as bloody Ashley nearly did in a short time. But anyway, that was my second recollection. Tranmere game in the FA Cup where we won 1-0 with a Shearer header to settle in the game. So that's my second one.
Cheers, George. On to you, Mitch, for your second game.
Again, people must think we sometimes coordinate all of this, and we haven't. I've gone for another game against Tranmere, and to set the scene, this is 2 months after the game I talked about for my first game, and 6 months before Steve's game with Tranmere, where we went 10 out of 10. And this is how quickly everything changed after Keegan Kane kept up and we went to the next level. So this is a home game in April '92. Newcastle 2, Tranmere 3. It was still a relegation battle. We were doing actually okay, but we went through this funny little patch where we showed the defensive frailties that we had under our dealers. And it's not without noting the key thing was Kilcline was missing. Picked up a calf injury. I think he missed 3 or 4 games. And that was when the defensive frailties returned. And it showed how key, when Keegan talks about him being such an important sign, to this day, I'll die on this hill. Killecall was Kevin Keegan's pound for pound best value signing, full stop.
Yep.
Because that's what started it all. Without that, we go down. And this game shows why. You know, in this season, we'd already lost twice to Tranmere. We'd lost to them in the league, and I think we'd lost to them in the cup as well. It was a League Cup, maybe something, I can't remember. But either way, we hadn't beaten Tranmere and we didn't beat them again. The game script was we went 1-0 up. Kevin Brock, really lovely finish, 15 minutes, and you think, right, we've got to keep this going. This Tranmere side had players who were starting to see their careers out, but they were still really good players. They still had that bit of class. And the most important one was John Aldridge. On his swan song from after leaving Liverpool, equalised after about 5 minutes after Brock got them up, and then his second was a header. That was just pure class. It was one of those ones that only very, very, very good strikers score. And we're going half time, 2-1 down, and we looked like a team that started to feel sorry for themselves again. And then when we came out, it was the same in the second half. After about the hour, exquisite finish, and I can't remember who it was by, but it was one of these ones. He gets it on the edge of the area, goes round the man, tucks it in the corner, 3-1, and you think, oh God, where we're going here? We need another win. We need to get some momentum again. 80th minute, Brock got a second, which made for at least a bit of helter-skelter in the last 10 minutes. But that game was like a pastiche of the whole season, because without key elements in it, we were frail at the back. We could score goals, but you always knew we were going to concede goals. And it wasn't until we'd got that defensive stability with Kilcline in, and when he came back towards the end of the season, that we turned it around again. But it was nothing but, if anything, but exciting once Keegan returned. I wish we'd had a bit more comfort towards the end, but I don't think any of them would change the ultimate outcome for all the world. Yeah. And you've got to hope that we get to the end of the season and we're looking ahead, and 6 months down the line, if we've turned it around as much as we have between this game and Steve's first game, we'll all be pretty damn happy, I think.
Yeah. Good stuff. Okay, Stu, on to you.
Well, to follow on from what Mitch has just said about planning things, I've got the reverse fixture to Steve's first game, which is 10 months after the one that Mitch has just talked about. This is, and it shows you the difference in less than a season. As Steve had already mentioned, we won the first 10 games, and we end up winning the league at a canter as well. But this game away to Tranmere at the end of February was we were on the back of a 6-game winless run. There was a lapse at the end of January, mid-February, and Portsmouth actually caught us, didn't they? They went ahead for a week.
Yeah, they did.
I mean, they ended up finishing third, but this was our first game to win again and start off another run. I went to this game, it was on a Sunday. I went to this game with the lads from the bakery. This is 2 months after I'd broke my wrist at Barnsley in one of the games we talked about in the previous show. So I thought I'd risk it. The healing had been done. Let's go with them again. And it's great when you go away in great numbers. You know, the old adage, safety in numbers. And we took over Tranmere. The crowd was about 13,000. But I would bet everyone who wants to have a bet there was at least 5,000 Newcastle fans minimum in that ground. And when you walk around Trenton Park, you know, the people are buying cans out of the off license because there's a shop near the corner bit. So there was all the pre-match banter. The Geordies had taken over town. And the song at the time was E-I-E-I-E-I-O, up the Football League we go. And that was getting rendition after rendition. Now, unfortunately, there was a really bad incident when, before the game kicked off, there was a minute's silence for young James Bulger, who suffered that harrowing murder only a few weeks previously. And it was in Liverpool, but it was near Tranmere, well, in the Wirral. And what happened is there was some Newcastle fans had come in late in the standing bit behind the goal where we're all crammed in, and they didn't realise there was a minute silence on. They were singing songs. So once the minute silence finished, there was a virtue of abuse from the home fans, and rightly so, to be fair. But it was a misunderstanding. It wasn't done on purpose. There was no disrespect intended at all. But so it created an atmosphere that just took off. You know what Newcastle fans are like. They're not going to back down. There was a shh right the way along from behind the goal, right way, because you had to come in at the corner end past the food bit that Tom Lynch was talking about in the takeaway place where there was a food fight at half time. But everyone was shushing them, but it was too late. The minute silence had been broken. But like I said, the atmosphere cranked up. It really did crank up a notch. And thankfully for us, Newcastle rose to it. And I think because they'd been stuttering lately, and then they seen how many Newcastle fans were there and the noise that was being made, it was like a brothers in arms thing. And we really did play well this game. But we didn't take the lead till, I think it was about the 25th, 26 minutes, when Clarkey got the ball and he got up the left side of the pitch, and he went past the player, shimmied to shoot, then took a shot, and then this keeper makes a terrible mistake. And he's went to catch it, and it's bobbled in front of him, and it's went up, it's hit his chest, and it's come out. And Rob Lee's just straight in there, sticks it in the corner, and he celebrates in front of what can only be described as proper limbs. It was the relief of what had happened previously, but also we're in the lead after struggling in the league. And the second goal, who scored the second one? I'll put it down. Oh yeah, Clarkey took the corner. Kevin Scott flicks it on, and Ned Kelly at the back post leading back, and he arrowed one in. What was that word you used there, George? Because it was a bit like that. It was straight and hard.
Celerity.
Yeah, he hit it like that. So that went in a goal, 2-0 up half time, and it was comfortable, and it was deserved as well. So the second half, we never really got out of second gear. We just held it, and I'm sure that team talk was like, don't go hell for leather as the team had done previously that season, to great effect, to be fair. I think it was more, look, we've got the 3 points here in the bag. Let's just look after them. Nothing silly, don't leave gaps. But it's quite hard when you've got a team like that to restrain them, isn't it? The natural, and the manager, the natural is to go forward, is to attack. So near the end, there's about 3-4 minutes to go, and Tranmere were pushing, and the ball broke. And this time, Clarkey's on the left. He was man of the match this day. He was everywhere. He really was. And he ran forward from just outside his own box. He's looked up. He's seen Ned Kelly make a run through the middle, and he's done another one of those words passes to him over a player straight to Ned Kelly, who's laid it off to Rob Lee, who's bushed the lug to get there. And Rob Lee's just come in on what would be the old inside left position, and he's went past the player, and he's cracked this ball from the edge of the box. Not hard, but accurate. And that was a good thing with Rob Lee. He was very accurate with his shooting, and it evaded the keeper's grasping efforts to save it, and it goes into the bottom corner. So 3-0, definitely game over. And all the way home, we're EIOing up the motorway, I suppose. But we'd also just signed some lad who had his own song that I love. And when he got the ball, he scored a goal. So we'd just signed him. He didn't play that game. But I believe this must have raised the players as well, thinking, right, hang on, we're slipping a bit, and they've got this new lad in, because there was such a good team. So Andy Cole is signed for us, and as we know, the rest is history. We finished the season really comfortably. So it was a really good away game. I loved that one. It was one of my favourite ones at the time.
Good stuff. Gary's asking, has your delivery arrived?
On Saturdays, mate, not a Wednesday.
There we go.
But I've got a delivery here. I'm looking after this one.
All right, Steve, Hasty, on to you again.
Right. I've stuck the same season, different team, obviously. I've gone to a cup game this week. Last week I talked about the fourth round of the cup, but this was the third round when we played Port Vale, 2nd of January 1993. The team Keegan put out, Pav in goal, Venison and Beresford, Liam O'Brien in midfield with Kevin Scott and Steve Howie as your two central defenders. We had Gavin Peacock, David Kelly, Lee Clark, Sheedy, and Rob Lee. That was our front five, because I was going to say the midfield and strikers, but the way Keegan was playing at this time, it was just basically a front five and a back four, wasn't it? You know, that's the way that he operated, and had Liam O'Brien just operating just in front of the back four. Your favourites, Mitch, was on the bench, Killer Kilcline, and along with Paul Bracewell. PortVale had been relegated the previous season, and they were in Division 2. And I don't know whether it was an element of that, or whether it was something that you mentioned, Stu, where you talked about how we went into a little bit of a dull spell. And I think the dull spell probably came around about the cup and just a little bit after. But this particular game, first 45 minutes was shocking. Was it a New Year hangover? You know, the fact it was the 2nd of January was straight after New Year. Mickey Quinn wasn't playing. Maybe that was a New Year hangover as well. I think he was actually injured. But the fact was we had a shocking first half. Absolutely shocking first half. We could have been 2-0 down. Pav made a great save to block somebody who was clean through. And then Swan, the central defender, he knocked the ball past Pav and it got cleared off the line by Howie. That kept winning the game. And at half time, in the words of the reporter, it says that Keegan admitted later that he had given his players a rare ear bashing at half time. That's not like Kevin, is it? You know, a rare ear bashing. I can imagine it was slightly more than an ear bashing, because when things weren't going right, Kevin would have, I'm certainly, laid the law down to them. And they weren't, it's in front of a 29,873 crowd on the day after New Year's Day. I think Kevin would have been expecting an awful lot more simply for the fans, and that's the way that he would have looked at it. So anyway, start the second half, it turned into a totally different game. And after 4 minutes, we went 1-0 up. Rob Lee cut in, shot. Ball gets parried and Peacock slots it in. Gavin Peacock. Then Kelly went off injured and Rob Lee had moved into centre, play as a centre forward, and it kind of completely changed the whole look of the team. And that was what Rob Lee was good at. He was so versatile. You know, you could play him up front, you could play him wide on the right, you could play him in central midfield, because he was such an intelligent footballer. And also he had that drive about him that, you know, he was for me, he was one of those midfielders who was always going to give 100%. It's very rare that you could turn around and say that Rob Lee played in the game when he didn't give 100%. And in this particular game, he completely dominated. He laid another goal on for Peacock. He scored himself. And then Kevin Sheedy scored in the 80th minute. And really, I mean, to say that we're another one of those cliches, swept them aside, would be an understatement. Tremendous performance. I think we all went home, and that was the start of, you know, like when you have a third round cup win like that, which was actually, from what I can gather, it was our biggest third round cup win, or biggest cup win that we'd had since the 1974 run. You know, a clear 4-0 victory. I'm looking at it here, and it says that luckily when Kelly got carried off, it was a twisted ankle, but he was okay. It was a lockout crowd. But another important feature was the 2 goals by Peacock, and bearing in mind this was only January, took him up to 17 goals for the season. And I think, again, the loss of Peacock during that sort of run-in where I think he pulled a hamstring, and he was out, or a groin, and he was out for a stretch of games, that did upset the formations as well, and the performances, Stu. And you're right, the balance of it, the whole balance went exactly. You know, you lose someone who had scored 17 goals by January, then you know that you're going to struggle. And it did, but thankfully the players and Terry Mack, happy birthday Terry, and Kevin managed to turn it around, and obviously we went on, as you say, and we won the league. But that was the cup match, 2nd of January 1993, 4-0 PortVale. That's my game.
Great stuff. Steve Wilkinson, on to you with the final game of this evening.
Right. Well, I'm going to talk for my game is the game that Keith Roll just referred to and said he couldn't believe, and it's a fact that it's 37 years since we last played Carlisle. We've only played them 9 times And that first game I talked about was the first time we'd ever played them, and this was the last time in 1984. And it's also the game, Steve, you mentioned before about the penalty, which we'll come to a little bit later. But it was the season when, if you think in a few years' time, when we've got Mbappe, Neymar, and Messi playing for us up front, I doubt we're going to see much better football than we saw from the likes of Keegan, Waddle, and Beardsley playing together. And their interactive passing and what went on then was epitomised in this game that we won 5-1. And it was a stepping stone towards getting promotion. And it's hard to believe even this season, as well as we'd played that year, we ended up only going in third place. There was Chelsea and Sheffield who beat us, but never mind. The objective, as it is this season, to stay up. The objective then was to get up, and we achieved that by finishing third. And in those days, no playoff. You were straight up from third. But this game, Carlisle, who weren't having too bad in the league actually, in the second division, ended up finishing seventh. So this is the game on 23rd of April. So it's towards the end of the season. A full crowd, because at that time the ground was restricted, so it was 33,000 there, and we got off to a good start. In the first 10 minutes or so, Beardsley put a ball into the box. A lot of interactive passing between the players, primarily Beardsley, Keegan, and Waddle, and this one was Beardsley tapping across, and Keegan was a tap in at the far post. Same players involved in the second goal. Just before half time, 39 minutes, Beardsley picked a long ball up from a free kick, I think, by Kenny Wharton, who was playing left back. He knocked it into Keegan, who flicked it across the goal, and Chris Waddle was coming in for a tap in. And then in the second half was the goal that, not the goal that Steve was talking about, was this penalty, and it was a corner on the right for Carlisle. Swung in. John Anderson was a judge to have handled it, and the Carlisle got the penalty. And I think it was the name of my notes was who took the penalty. Alan Shoulder, actually. Yes, I knew.
Yeah, it was Alan. Yeah, I thought it was.
Alan Shoulder was, yes, who ex-Newcastle player, who had and Kevin Carr, who was in goal, saved the penalty, and there was a follow up, and Kevin Carr saved it again, but the ball broke to Chris Waddle on the right wing, and he just surged forward, crossed the halfway line, put the ball forward to Terry Mack, birthday boy, who passed it into the box with a 1-2 from Keegan. And he put the ball across. Beardsley flicked it on, and Keegan had got to the back post and sort of almost bundled it. I think it was arguably a header, but it sort of looped in, if I remember, on the far post at the Gallagher end. And that, from what could have been 2-1 scoreline and Carlisle get back in the game, to us being 3-0 up and coasting in the game. And from then on, we'll put more pressure on. Again, in the 73rd and 77th minute, we got two more goals, this time by both of them by Peter Beardsley. But again, both goals involving play by Waddle and Keegan. And we led 5-0, and then in 10 minutes from time, Carlisle got a consolation. Quite a decent goal, I think. Probably going back to what Stu was talking about, I think this was a lob. The ball was just outside the penalty area, and it was airborne, and I think the keeper lobbed it into the bottom corner, and Kevin Carr couldn't get across to reach it. So that was my second game, winning 5-1 with those three particularly playing brilliant football. And to say, it was a stepping stone to a few weeks later getting up to the first division.
Good stuff. Fantastic, lads. Thanks for doing your research. Great as always. We finish the show with some celebrity fans and then some players that played for the teams that we have mentioned. So celebrity fans in no particular order.
Helen Skelton.
Yeah. Correct.
Carlisle.
He's in blue. I don't know his name though.
He is.
Yeah.
He is, that's right.
I should admit I knew his name, but not know that I knew he's from blue. It's more embarrassing, isn't it? Simon someone.
That's right. Yeah. I'll give you half a point. Anybody get his surname?
I can't get it right, because if I do, it'll be lodged.
Spider VPN.
Simon Webb.
That's it. Well done. See, I'm in a Christmas kind of mood. You see, very giving you.
I'm now
presents,
embarrassed.
lads. Port Vale.
Yeah.
Jonathan Wilkes.
Jonathan Wilkes.
Oh,
Yeah.
There you go. Aye.
Who's best pals with who?
Robbie.
Robbie Williams. Yeah.
Robbie Williams.
Robbie Williams, big Port Vale fan as well.
Power
Phil
Taylor.
Taylor.
Phil Taylor.
Phil the Power Taylor. This one surprised me a little.
Elvis Costello, isn't it?
Yeah.
Elvis Costello.
On
Yeah.
his army. Elvis
Yeah.
Costello.
What?
Well, he comes from that part of the world.
David Dimbleby.
Dimbleby.
David Dimbleby.
Followed quite nicely by
Jonathan.
Brother.
yeah.
Yeah.
Dimbleby.
And now we're getting into Tranmere.
Craig Charles.
Craig Charles.
Craig Charles, aye.
And
They Stubbs.
Ray
Ray.
Stubbs.
Yeah.
clean sweep, even though I did help you a little bit on Simon Webb, but it is the time to be given a few presents away.
Festive.
So, yeah, we go into the players. As you say, quite a lot, but I've tried to find a few to trip you up. So here's the first one.
Kevin Scott, is it?
It's not.
No.
Look at him sitting in the top corner, smug as out.
Top two are a nightmare, lads. Top two. If you get either of these, you've done your homework.
Right, I'm going to guess
Ryan
them.
Donaldson.
No.
Cameron Ferguson.
No. It's Lewis Cass.
Oh,
Nelly.
Lewis Cass.
He's in the team as well.
Is that Remy Street?
No.
Zola.
No. Another really obscure one. I don't think you'll get it.
Is it Richard Offion?
No.
Is that Tranmere, is it?
Yeah.
Or Port Vale?
Port Vale, sorry.
Port Vale.
No.
JJ Hooper.
All right.
Who?
JJ Hooper.
JJ Hooper.
Not a cop show in the 70s.
No, that's TJ Hooker.
All right.
That's Elias Sorensen.
Correct. Elias Sorensen. Looking at the substitute coming on. York City this season.
Oh, man.
No, Campbell, no.
No. Carlisle connection.
Is that Lewis Guy then?
No.
No.
Carlisle lad as well. Joe White.
Oh,
right.
right.
Joe White. There you go. You'll not forget that one.
That's Gillespie.
Gillespie.
Mark Gillespie.
Bobby Monk.
Monks managed Carlisle, of course, and took this player with him.
Peter Beardsley.
Peter Beardsley.
Very young Peter Beardsley.
Pedro as a youngster.
That's Owen Brown.
Correct. Who played up front with Peter Beardsley
He did.
at Carlisle.
Alan Shoulder.
That's Alan
Alan
Shoulder.
Shoulder.
Down the pit.
Alan Shoulder.
Ian Bogie.
Is that Ian Bogey?
Bogey, yeah.
Aye, PortVale.
Bogues. And last but by no means least,
Joe Allen.
Joe Allen scoring a goal for Port Vale. Great stuff. Just time to fit the teams in, lads. Steve Wilkinson, we'll go to you first.
Okay, right. Well, as we talked earlier on, there's lots of goalkeepers to pick from, but I've put in goal Kevin Cork as he contributed into my games. At the back, James Tavernier, Kevin Scott, Bob Moncur, Kenny Wharton. Two in midfield, Jamie McLean. Memories of him almost drowning in that Sunderland match with all the water. David McCreary, and I think this is a pretty good forward line. Brian Robson, David Kelly, Peter Beardsley, and Alan Shoulder. Plenty of goals there in that forward line.
Fantastic.
And manager Bill McGarry.
Bill McGarry. Steve Hasty.
Right, I went all Carlisle. I went Tim Krul in goal, Neil MacDonald. And because it's winter and he would be wearing gloves, I went for Wes Saunders. I went Steve Carney and Bobby Moncur at the back. Midfield at 3 of Tommy Craig, Kenny Wharton, and Dave McCreary. Peter Beardsley playing in front of them, and up front alongside or just ahead of them was Michael Bridges and Pop Robson. And quite honestly, you could have had an entire backroom staff just from Carlisle.
Yeah.
If you could have had coaches, you got had goalkeeping coaches, you got everybody. But I've chosen Bob Stoko just to wind the Mackhams up as my manager.
Okay, Stu.
Well, I was going to start saying I'm showing off because I did a mixed team with Tranmere and PortVale, and I've done a Carlisle team as well. So, as I said, I was going to say I'm showing off, but I know what's coming. So, I'm not. Right, so my mixed team is for PortVale and Tranmere. I had Kevin Sheedy as manager because he managed Tranmere. I had Jack Anick in goal, Lewis Cass, Andy Thorne, Remy Streets in defence. Both teams have got a 3-5-2. Then midfield, I had Des Hampton, Ian Bogie, Ryan Taylor, Liam O'Brien, and Donaldson. And up front was Joe Allen and Calvin Zola. So the Carlisle team, manager was Bobby Moncur. In goal was Tim Krul. Back 3 of Tavernier, Carney, and Wes Saunders. Dave McCreary in midfield, Tommy Craig, Jamie McLean, Kerry Wharton. Peter Beardsley sitting in front of them or behind the front 3 of Pop Robson, Sorensen, and Peter Beardsley.
Great stuff. Mitch.
Right. I could have done a good 3 Carlisle teams, but I didn't. I was going to do a Carlisle team of Newcastle players versus a Carlisle team of Sunderland players, because you could do that as well. I've settled on a Carlisle team and a mixed PortVale Tranmere team myself as well. One thing that this research has shown is how much the game has changed.
Yeah.
If you look at the players that went to Carlisle from Newcastle, going up to about the 80s, 90s, it was all players who were coming out at the end of their career, who were wanting to still play, and they were going to a team local to the team that had been made their name.
Because they wanted to live in the region.
Absolutely. And after the 90s, it's all loan players going to these clubs.
Yeah.
And the players at the end of their career don't need to keep playing. They've made their money and they just disappear. And you talk about things filtering down the pyramid. If this doesn't tell anybody in football that stuff doesn't filter down the pyramid anymore, it should. Whether that's players or money or anything else. So that's me rant over. So the Carlisle team I've gone with is Kevin Carr in goal, full back pairing of Neil MacDonald and Kenny Wharton, centre backs Bob Moncur and Aidan McCaffrey, a midfield 3 is David McCreary, Tommy Craig and Wes Saunders, and then up front Peter Beardsley, Pop Robson and Alan Shoulder, and I made Bob Moncur player manager. Although 4 of those players were player managers at Carlisle, would you believe? And my mixed PortVale Tranmere team was Jack Anick in goal, full back pairing of Ryan Taylor and Des Hamilton, centre backs Kevin Scott and Andy Thorne, midfield 3 of Liam O'Brien, Ian Bogie and Steve Guppy. Then up front, there's no show without punch with Joe Allen, David Kelly and Calvin Zola. And the manager I've gone with Bobby Moncur's centre back partner, John McGrath, who managed PortVale.
Brilliant. Great stuff. Some great research tonight, lads. George, finish up with you.
2 teams again, one all Carlisle and one mixed of PortVale and Tranmere. And as Neil says, you could pick all sorts of teams with the Carlisle lot. So here's Carlisle 1 to 11. Tim Krul, George Lackenby's, for old time's sake, because I actually played with George a little bit. James Tavernier, 4 at David McCreary. You could hardly leave him out. 5, Graham Winstanley, another player that I just remember. 6, David Beerhall, a local Wallsend lad who got into the team. 7, Brian Robson. 8, Ivor Broadus from back in the old days, but I remember I enjoyed seeing playing. 9, Michael Bridges. 10, Peter Beardsley, and 11, Lewis Guy, again for old time's sake. So that's my Newcastle, Carlisle Newcastle team. And just to be different, I made Paul Simpson the manager because he was with us for a little while as assistant manager. And then the mixed team, I went Jack Annick, Phil Babb, Billy Aitken from the 1930s, 4, Bill McGarry, 5, Kevin Scott, 6, Andy Thorne, 7, Ryan Donaldson, 8, David Kelly, 9, Alex Matthew, 10, Liam O'Brien, and 11, Steve Guppy. And the manager there, I did the same as Neil did, as John McGraw was my choice there. So that's my 2 teams as well.
Brilliant stuff. I've just seen Stu's face there when I put up what next week's is. You better start researching now. The final week of teams is Oxford, Reading and Peterborough. We then go into the FA Cup stories. Then we've got Christmas week with the European stuff, which we've already recorded. And we'll finish off in the new year with Barcelona. So Oxford, Reading, Peterborough next week. Lads, as always, been a pleasure. I've got a dash. There is a little announcement from Newcastle Legends and NUFC Matters about a rather special dinner next year. I'll leave you with this.